many of you have ever heard your parents say something along the lines of, "Finish your vegetables. There are starving children in Africa who would love to have that"? How many of you? How many of you have heard something like this? All of us in this room have heard something along these lines. This has become a really common trope in the United States, so much so that we find it in our advertisements, in our movies, and everyone has heard this. However, one of the things that makes this so effective is that I think all of us in this room want to help people less fortunate than ourselves. But part of the problem with this mentality is that it causes us to sometimes invest in things that do more harm than good. So today, I want to talk about how American giving can cause more harm than good out of good intentions. Now, this has become an increasingly relevant topic for us in the United States. In 2011, the National Center for Charitable Statistics claimed that Americans gave $175 billion, with a B, dollars to charitable aid. That's a lot of money. And more importantly, millennials, our generation, gave the highest percentage of their income. Generosity is an important part of the American culture. And so as we continue to become a more and more generous society, we need to make sure we're giving well. Now, as someone who's worked in missions for 7 years and in different countries, I've gotten to see firsthand when projects go well and when projects go poorly. So today, my argument is that American philanthropy is harmful to developing economies because it stifles economic opportunity and undercuts businesses that are trying to make a successful, sustainable economy. So first, the problem with charity. Now, even just saying that sounds oxymoronic. The problem with charity. How can charity be a bad thing? Well, I want to take, for example, Tom's. How many of you have heard of Tom's? Awesome, most of you. Tom's is a shoe company, and one of the things that's made them very successful is that they're a one-for-one company. For every pair of shoes you buy, they give a pair to a child in a developing country. And since their founding in 2006, Tom's, according to their website, has given away 75 million pairs of shoes in 70 different countries. Now this sounds fantastic, and we think, well done, good job, Tom's. However, part of the problem with this, CNBC journalist Antonio Herrera found in 2013 that it costs Tom's about $7 to produce a pair of shoes, but they charge $60. This means only about 10% of what you're paying for this pair of shoes is actually getting donated. Now for Tom's, this is an important part of their business model. It's an important part of their advertising. So 10% is something they can stomach. But for developing countries, that 10% has a monumental impact on small businesses. To put it in perspective, economist Lawrence Booth reported in the Journal of the American Finance Association in 2001 that businesses in developing countries function by the same paradigms, the same rules, as businesses in the developed world in the United States. So imagine if you're a shoe store owner in the United States and someone starts handing away free shoes next door. You could never compete. You would go out of business. And this is precisely what's happening when we give away free things in an otherwise area where people can make money. Now, in the United States, to take this a step further, the Small Business Administration reported in 2016 that we are home to 28.8 million small businesses that employ 57 million people and that accounted for 60% of all the jobs created since 2008. That's a huge part of our economic growth. This is even more so the case in a developing country, where small businesses are where everyone is starting out. So consequently, undercutting these small businesses is detrimental to their prospects for growth. And so we should not invest in ways that undercut that opportunity. Now, some may argue that some level of giving is necessary. Peter Singer, in his book, The Life You Can Save, wrote in 2010 that there's a certain level, a certain benchmark of giving that's necessary in order to sustain life. After all, dead people can't work. However, the problem with this mentality is that it doesn't account for how we give. We could give $130 billion of rice and it will spoil. Or we could invest $130 billion in rice farmers and feed generations in a sustainable and meaningful way that impacts their community. So what's the solution? How do we solve this problem with charity? Today, my argument is that we should invest in social entrepreneurial enterprises and microfinancing organizations. An example. Urban developer Robert Lupton wrote in his 2012 book, Toxic Charity, about 2 villages in Nicaragua. Both were about the same size, they're in the same general area, and both had the same problem, access to clean water. One village reached out to a church in the United States who came in, dug a well, and everyone was happy. The next year when the church returned, they found that during the year the well had broken, but no one in the town had the expertise to fix it or the money to afford the parts. Consequently, they had been going back to the same dirty water source that they had been before. They were no better off. The church repaired the well, went back home. The next year when they came back, the same issue had happened. This happened 3 years in a row. Now compare Town 2. Town 2 reached out to an organization called Hope International. Hope International gave the town a loan. They appointed a committee from among the town to take care of the loan. They charged a water bill to the people who used the well, and they hired a local contractor to dig the well. In the same 3-year time period, what had happened? Well, in 3 years, the well was still functioning. They had paid off their loan. The well was so successful that they were selling water rights to a local prison and a local school, and they used the revenue to repave the roads in their town to help their businesses get more traffic. That town was able to pay forward what they had been given, and it had a lasting, sustainable impact that helped them to succeed. So what are the ways that we can give? Obviously, this is an important aspect of how we give to have a sustainable impact. Today, I want to offer you 3 possible solutions. The first is microfinancing, and this is what Hope International did for this town in Nicaragua. Hope International is one example of a microfinancing organization that works by giving small loans to people who have an idea, who have a dream for a business but don't know how to accomplish it. Each person is given a loan, and they're formed into groups that they hold each other accountable. And that way, if you have a bad month, it's not the end of the world. The other people in the group help to pay it off for you. But it also forms accountability, and it gives those entrepreneurs an opportunity to learn finance skills and to learn how to start up their own business, to have a sustainable impact on their families and their futures. But microfinancing isn't the only option. There's also patronage, that is, buying products that are produced in these developing economies. Now, one of the downsides to patronage is that there's a large amount of transportation costs that can be involved. And so what patronage makes sense for is culture-specific products. Artwork, for example, or food, which has to be grown in a certain climate. These are examples of culturally sensitive products that would be good for patronage. We've all seen ways in which we can buy, like we saw with Colombian chocolate, with fair trade chocolate, how our patronage can help build upon these hopes for local entrepreneurs. The final technique that we have is franchising. Now, franchising is a short-term solution, and it's not perfect, but it can provide a good start. Just in October of 2017, Dion Searcy, writing for the New York Times, reported about KFC. That's right, KFC, the home of the $5 fill-up bucket, was making an impact in the African nation of Ghana. So much so that the New York Times thought it was worth writing about. What Dion Searcy had found was that KFC had dramatically revolutionized their restaurant industry by providing large portions of delicious food and paying relatively high wages compared to most of the restaurants around. Now that seems odd to us in an American context, but these franchises pay wages that are capable of putting money in people's pockets to give them something to live on, and that can form a springboard into future development. Franchising is not a perfect solution, but it can be a good short-term solution to get the capital flowing to start more permanent, sustainable solutions. All of us, I think, want to help those who are less fortunate than ourselves. And there are numerous ways to do that. We love giving because giving makes us feel good. But we have to make sure if giving and generosity are going to be such a huge part of our lifestyle, we need to do it well. The next time you consider giving that dollar to charity, or next time you see that commercial pop on TV with the sad little puppies asking you to give $1 a day, my encouragement to you is consider investing instead in social entrepreneurial enterprises or to invest in microfinancing organizations that can have a sustainable impact on the communities they're attempting to help. Together, with our $175 billion of funding, we have a real possibility at ending poverty, but it has to happen when we stop looking at quantity and start looking at efficiency in our giving. So I encourage you, look into your organizations, do your homework before you give, and help give people a sustainable step towards their future, for their families, and for our own sake in our growingly global world. Thank you.